Now, no matter what kind of athlete you are, strength athlete focused on weightlifting, or an endurance athlete that focuses on running, or maybe a power endurance athlete like a rower, it is possible to thrive on an entirely plant-based diet.
Hello YouTubers, can you be an athlete and not eat meat? Can you perform well as a vegan, as a vegetarian? Well, today we're going to discuss that as inspired by the documentary on Netflix called Gamechangers. It brings up a lot of interesting points and we're going to go over some of them today. And we're going to talk to Austin from Training Tall, who trains consistently every day and is also a vegan. So we're going to try and learn upon his experiences and see if he thinks it's possible. But now we're going to get on the water and I'll see you after for a little bit of a chat on Gamechangers. Oh yeah! And we've made it to the club to discuss if you can eat meat and be an athlete, or not eat meat and be an athlete. Ed, what have you had for food today?
For first breakfast, I had cereals and milk, cow's milk. Second breakfast, I had 2 eggs, 2 bacons, porridge and some bread. Not all on the same plate, the porridge was separate. And then for lunch, we had veggie, gnocchi and sauce and salad and stuff.
So would you say you are not a vegan or a vegetarian?
I am most certainly not vegan or vegetarian.
And so what is your opinion on eating meat and athletic performance? Whether you should or shouldn't?
Well, I did study a bit of nutrition when I was a student, and a lot of the nutrition advice is always just have a balanced diet. That's obviously my opinion as well as some sort of studies that I've seen, but there's not a huge amount of people that are high performance athletes that are vegan, at least that I know of.
So it can be done.
I think it can be done.
Yeah.
Whether that person would then say that their nutrition and all that is optimal for performance, I don't know whether that they could say if they'd always been vegan or vegetarian.
So it matches my opinion as well, and it's the same thing with sort of the Gamechangers documentary. We've both watched that, and maybe you have watched it. If you haven't watched it, I recommend to watch it, but also a big pinch of salt when you do watch it.
Yeah, don't watch it and think that it's the be all and end all of nutrition and performance, because they sell a lot of, not necessarily lies, but maybe mistruths.
Truths that don't tell the whole story.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we'll go over some of those points in a minute. But it's just with your diet, it's making sure that you really have, the biggest thing, like Ed said, is making sure it's balanced.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Gamechangers documentary for me was. It was like, it made me look into my diet, not just like, oh, am I eating this much protein or this much carbs or whatever it is. It's more, I looked at sort of, am I eating enough vegetables? Because with veg, you do get a lot of good nutrients from veg. And if you don't eat any fruit or veg, then you don't get those nutrients, or you don't get as many of those nutrients from sort of just eating potatoes and meat, or rice and meat.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But we'll move on to sort of the Gamechangers before we talk to Austin from Training Tall, who is a vegan athlete, a plant-based, plant-powered athlete. But so there's a lot of things in Gamechangers, like we said earlier, that don't necessarily lie, but miss out parts that could maybe skew the opinion that they portray. So I think one of them for the drinking milk, you know that one. Yeah,
so they had a study where they quoted of, it was cow's milk against, I think, soya milk, and they said that when a person drank cow's milk, their testosterone levels went down, and when it's drank soya milk, it stayed the same, because they were trying to say that some other studies had said that soya milk made testosterone also go down, but that study was sort of about 10 people, and it was like 7 men, 3 women and 2 children. And then after 2 hours, the testosterone was back to normal. Yeah. So they sort of they quote what they want you to see, and miss out quite a vital piece of like evidence that would sort of make them saying that study completely pointless.
Yeah, and so that's what seems to be a running theme throughout all of Game Changers. When I watched it at first, I was like, well, a lot of it's very shocking. And it's like, oh, well, if my testosterone's dropping, that's not good for performance. And there's other points of your vasodilation, your veins, your arteries narrowing or getting clotted due to increased fat from meat. But the proof in the studies outside of the Game Changers on that was it's fat from any source. And so if you have a lot of fat from an avocado or like olive oils, it's going to do the same thing to your arteries and your veins.
They try to make out like avocados and not like fat. It's magic fat.
Yeah.
It doesn't do the same thing, which is just false.
Which,
In
our expert opinion, obviously we're not doctors, so from before and after what we're about to say, it's make sure that you do your own research and don't take, just like the Game Changers, don't take just what we're saying as the truth. Do your own research on, especially if you're looking at your own individual diet. But there's another point with they compare eggs and steak to a peanut butter sandwich. I think it was a 3-ounce steak to a peanut butter sandwich, and to get it just says a peanut butter sandwich. It doesn't say how much peanut butter, and to get, so a 3-ounce steak, so it's not that, it's maybe like this size, not very big. To get the same amount of protein, they say have a peanut butter sandwich, and I looked at the peanut butter that I have at home, and you have to have 5 tablespoons.
Which is just ridiculous. It's like almost
so much
an entire pot.
It's like a huge amount of peanut butter. So it's like things like that where yes, you can have the same amount of protein from a peanut butter sandwich, but it's going to be something else. And that's what the kind of thing with the argument of protein and not getting enough protein for a vegan or vegetarian diet. You can get the right amount of protein and carbs and everything from a vegan or vegetarian diet. And Austin later on kind of goes on about that. It's just a matter of it makes it a little bit more difficult.
I think you have to be much more conscientious if you are vegan, because you do have to you have to think, right, I can't just have pasta and veg for my tea, or dinner, depending on where you're from. Because if you have that, you're not getting enough macronutrients. You are getting your carbs and your vitamins and minerals, but you're not getting enough of the other stuff like your fats and your proteins. And the fat is important to get in. If you're eating a no-fat diet, it's not good for you. Your body and your cells and the cell walls of your body are made of fat. And you need that to survive.
Sometimes I hear and talk to a lot of vegans who supplement their diet with protein powders or to up their sort of intake or sort of make sure that they're getting all the nutrients they need. So like protein powders or like vitamins and mineral tablets and stuff.
Yeah, everything that we've ever been taught by GB Rowing and doctors just in general is that if you're having to supplement anything in your diet, then your diet isn't sufficient.
Yeah.
Like a supplement is the last resort if your body can't take in enough of what it needs.
Yeah.
So for example, I know people who have a B12 deficiency in that their body can't absorb as much as they should have, so they have to eat loads more than they would necessarily need to. And I don't think if you're a vegan and you're thinking, right, I'm a vegan, but now I need to start taking supplements so that I'm getting the stuff that I would have had I been eating a balanced diet. I don't necessarily think that's correct.
Yeah. Yes. Why just because well then it's a whole different argument of is a supplemented diet worse? But we've been taught yes it is. And also not only is it sort of like we said, like with lentils or peas or whatever, getting the same amount of protein. If you want the same amount of protein, you have to eat more. It's not just a case of just like 3 ounce and 3 ounce or like 100 grams and 100 grams. It could be like 100 grams and you have to eat a kilo of something to get the same, which makes it very difficult to do. And lastly, probably the beginning of Game Changers, they talked about sort of gladiators and how they were plant-based and how they were sort of the athletes of their times. And again, in Game Changers, they missed out quite a big part of the so-called study that they used, and it was actually more of like anecdotal evidence rather than the study itself. But when there's a lot of research done on other studies to do with the gladiators back in those days, yes, they were, or at least in some areas in the world, were predominantly plant-based. They were predominantly plant-based for a couple of reasons. One being they wanted to be fatter. They wanted to get bigger because they thought or knew that the more fat they had around their body, the easier essentially they could have a sword wound and still keep going.
Yeah.
And as well as the
another big thing about them being plant-based is that gladiators were mainly slaves, and the slave owners didn't really want to make them feed them meat, because it's expensive to feed what is essentially something that is disposable in a slave. You don't want to feed them something expensive because they're not going to last very long anyway. In the same way that you wouldn't feed an animal nowadays caviar or whatever because it's expensive, you wouldn't do that. They were almost like a commodity to have a slave, and they want to sort of keep them in good condition but make money off them effectively. And the more they feed them meat, the less money they would make off them.
So yes, like I said, a lot of Game Changers is not lies, but it misses out parts that skews how you do look at it.
I would, however, say, outside of performance, I quite like the idea of vegetarianism, veganism, and just in general eating less meat. I personally have tried to cut down on the amount of meat that I eat at home. I probably only eat meat at home once or twice a week now, whereas it used to be pretty much for every meal. I know that's not a huge amount of difference, but I feel like if most people in the world did that, it would make quite a big difference. And yeah, I think the small changes that if everyone made them would make a big difference.
Because it isn't like, it's not just, yes, there are performance benefits, or it'll make it just essentially a bit easier if you're eating meat to get everything that you need, in theory, if you have the correct diet. But eating meat can be, or is, very straining on the environment. Some places in the world do it better than others. Like in Britain, sort of cow farmers are pretty good, but in other places in the world, not so economically friendly.
Yeah, we don't have like battery
ecologically friendly
farming of cows and pigs and stuff in this country. Whereas in the States, I know that they do have that sort of thing.
Yeah, which can be quite damaging to both the animals and the environment.
Yeah.
Environmentally friendly, not economical or ecological. Both. But that will be it for our chat today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. So a little bit, basically, it all comes down to, if you're watching anything on Netflix or the internet, YouTube or Instagram or wherever it is, make sure that if you are going to make a change because of that, make sure the change is researched and you know it's right for you. Now, don't just make a change based on one fact that you might have read. Make sure you know that fact is correct.
I've heard someone say that a fact isn't a fact until it's been like verified like 3 times or something. You can't just go on one study either. Like if you wrote an essay at university and you only quoted one study, they'd be like, well, that's not enough evidence. Yeah. It should be the same really for your life.
Yeah. Especially with your diet, Jeff. If you went from eating meat every day to vegan without a lot of research, then it's going to cause problems. Like you can't just, yes, you can switch that quickly, but going vegan is quite a serious diet change. Just like if you went vegan to eating meat again, or even just vegetarian. Even Ed was saying cutting down meat during meals is a diet change. So making sure that the diet changes that you do are researched and are good for you, and then you can start to look at sort of the environmental factors of what you're looking at, making sure, because especially if you're looking at performance, you don't want to look back and say, oh well, maybe if I changed this diet or did this diet a bit better, then I could have went a bit faster or ran that mile a bit quicker or been more awake for my exams or something like that. But now we've been a bit serious, I'm gonna go home and then we're gonna talk to Austin about being a plant-powered athlete and see if his sort of, his opinions definitely are a little bit different because he has successfully performed on a vegan diet for, I think, 3 years he's been a vegan.
I actually tried out being a vegan as a sort of test, not as a sort of think that I was going to do it for like 2 or 3 weeks at university. I did quite enjoy it, but I don't think for me it was sustainable. Yeah.
So let us know in the comments below what you think of sort of veganism or vegetarianism or eating meat or not eating meat. And let's go talk to Austin. How are you? And we've made it back to the house to continue the discussion about whether or not you can be a vegetarian or a vegan and still perform athletically or in training. This isn't just for the Olympic hopefuls or the people that train every single day, multiple times a day. This is for everyone that wants to look at being a vegan or vegetarian and seeing if it might be a good idea for them. But obviously, like we've already mentioned, a balanced diet is so key. But we're going to talk to Austin from Training Tall, who has been a vegan. How long have you been a vegan for, Austin?
Now, I'm 6'8" and about 215 pounds, and I haven't had any meat, dairy, eggs, or any sort of animal products for almost 3 years now. And if a tall guy like me, who on training days has to eat close to 5,500 calories in a single day, if I can thrive on a plant-based diet, so can you.
That is a very good point. A lot of people say that you can struggle with a plant-based diet of getting enough fuel in. And like you said, you're a tall guy, I'm a tall guy as well, so we know how much that we have to consume, how much fuel we have to consume, because remember, food is fuel. And so 5,500 calories is a lot regardless of the type of diet. And like you're saying, if you can thrive on it, then there isn't a reason why other people can't too. And one of the big things that I've always kind of been curious about is when you switch from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, do you feel a difference, Austin? To you?
Since transitioning to an entirely plant-based diet, I can pretty honestly say that my athleticism and my energy levels, my sleep, and just my overall relationship with food has only gotten better. And you know, ever since I stopped rowing competitively, I focused a lot more on training for running, something that I was never ever good at. And this entirely vegan diet led me to a sub 5-minute 20-second mile, which if a big 6'8" guy like me can do that, I mean, that just speaks to the power of plants. I think the biggest difference overall is the true, passionate enjoyment of food. You know, potatoes used to just be whatever back in the meat and eating whatever days, but your taste buds really adapt and you start to just appreciate all the flavors of everything you eat. I can say that I enjoy eating now, I just enjoy eating so much more now than I ever have before.
Well, there's no argument there. Having to build that relationship with food when you're a meat eater, it's a bit easier for you to get those nutrients in. And like you're saying, and like Ed said earlier, you have to really prepare and be really conscientious of what you're eating if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, because you need to make sure you're getting all those nutrients. And so once you know about all these different foods that give you all these nutrients, then you start to think, well, how does that taste with this? How does that taste with that? So that's definitely an advantage where instead of, okay, I'm just going to grab a steak and some potatoes and some beans or something like that, which does require some extra value in that as well. That's not a great meal to have, but that may be a classic someone may have as a meat eater. Then you might say, okay, well, if I can't have the steak, well, how do I make that meal? So potatoes and beans and plus, say, I don't know, lentils or something in the vegan variety. How do I make it more appetizing? And I think that's really where the relationship comes, like you said, Austin, of really appreciating food a little bit more rather than just a potato being a potato or some spinach being some spinach. And that kind of leads me into my next question for you, Austin. So many people, and the arguments against being a vegan or being vegetarian is, where do you get your protein? So over to you.
As a vegan, you get asked all the time, where do you get your protein? There's no way you're getting enough protein. And you know, when you look at the research that's out there, like if you were training specifically for muscle growth, specifically for strength training, your protein intake is optimized at around 0.6 to 0.8 grams per pound of lean body mass. And so for a big guy like me, eating around 160 to like 170 grams of protein a day is plenty. And that's if I'm doing strictly like weight training on its own, not even taking into account endurance training or power endurance training where you honestly need even less. And come on, where do you get your protein? Where does the cow get its protein? It's not eating other cows. All protein is made by plants. And when you're consuming a variety of different plants, you're getting all the protein and all the amino acids that you need to be a strong, powerful fitness athlete person.
I think that brings up a really good point that people generally don't have the right idea about protein itself. So, like I said earlier, do the research for your diet specifically to know, okay, this is how much protein I need, this is how many carbs I need, etc. But the idea that is there, people think they need so much protein and they're going to really struggle to find enough in a vegetarian or vegan diet. But if you do it right and plan ahead, like we've already mentioned, and really be conscientious of what you're eating, it can really help and you can manage fine. But at the same time, a little bit against Austin there, you can kind of find it a bit more difficult, like we mentioned earlier, so yes, you might not need that much protein, but it is that little bit easier to get that much more protein in a meat-based diet. So you might, for say 100 grams of chicken, it's around 27 grams of protein, and for say 100 grams of lentils, there are 9 grams of protein, so it can make it quite difficult to consume enough to consume enough protein, because you have to literally consume so much more to get that protein. But like Austin's saying, you don't necessarily need that much protein like people might think. And that leads me into my next point. It sounds difficult to make sure you're getting the right amount of protein or the right amount of carbs or everything like that. So you really have to plan. That sounds difficult to me. But to you, Austin, what's the hardest part about being vegan?
To be honest, the hardest part about being vegan is finding a variety of options when you're going out to eat. It's nice to go out with friends or family and do fun things. But you know, a lot of restaurants, they don't offer a whole ton of different options that are entirely plant-based. What's nice is that as the years go on, more and more options are becoming available. But sometimes you find yourself in a pinch where you go to a place and you can only get 1 or 2 different things, and that's a bummer sometimes. But once you find the good spots with the good stuff, the good options, then that problem goes away.
That does make a lot of sense. I love heading to a restaurant and not really having to think about what I need to order. But again, that's kind of a choice you have to make for yourselves. And now, if, like Ed was saying earlier, looking at things, looking at his diet, changing things up, maybe eating a bit less meat, and myself earlier saying eating more veg, what advice would you give for those looking to start eating more plant-based? Not necessarily going vegan or vegetarian, but advice to eat more plant-based.
Now, for those that are seriously looking to eat more plant-based, reduce their meat intake, reduce their consumption of animal products, I want to have a serious talk about what is the most important and the biggest mistake people make when they first start transitioning towards more plant-based eating. It's that you don't eat enough calories. When you start eating plant foods, which just by their very nature have a lot more fiber and water in them, they, like in general, fill you up more without being as many calories. Or you focus on just eating like a bunch of lettuce or a bunch of salads. You know, like you need to eat some freaking calories. Oats, beans, lentils, tofu, nut butters. Boy, do you need to eat some nut butters. I mean, especially as like a tall guy, again, close to 5,000 calories a day. I pound the nuts, the seeds, the avocados, the almond butter. It's essential because those foods that are higher in calories due to their higher fat content are gonna help you get to your caloric daily needs. If you transition to more plant-based eating as an athlete, you have to be responsible and track your calories for the first couple days. Make sure that you're getting enough, because very often people start off and they're just not eating enough food. It's almost impossible to get heavy off of mainly a whole foods plant-based diet, but especially as an athlete too, the issue becomes eating enough. So just make sure that you're eating enough, and if you're struggling to hit your calories for the day, incorporate more healthy fats. Peanut butter's great, almond butter's great, and I know you like it too, so eat more of that. And, be prepared to expand your horizons and your understanding of food. Like, you just used to eat a slab of meat and then maybe some stuff around it. But when you're transitioning to more plant-based eating, all of a sudden there's thousands of different plants and stuff to make. And you look up simple recipes and you realize, wow, you can make cheese out of soaked cashews. Like, what the heck? Or you learn what turmeric is. And you start using spices and you start making stuff. And all of a sudden you're the chef that you never thought you'd become. So be prepared to experiment, get in enough calories. It's essential if you want to thrive as a vegan athlete. But I'll tell you right now, it's not as challenging as it might seem. And you might want to start by just making one meal per day totally plant-based. What's a great thing to do for that? Freaking oatmeal in the morning. Oats with some walnuts, maybe some pumpkin seeds, some nut butters with some berries, banana, dates. Like, you've got yourself right there a freaking oats, move, boats, power bowl. And you can just start with that and then maybe switch out a dinner once or twice a week and try some lentil pasta with vegetables and some sort of good sauce to go along with that. Possibilities are endless. And if you start taking out one meal a week, one meal a day, slowly realizing, wow, this isn't that crazy, you'll see the benefits and it'll be great. So I highly encourage you to give it a try. It's been great for me these last 3 years and I'm not going back.
Okay, and that is from Austin from Training Tall. Thank you very much, Austin, for taking the time to answer the questions. But like you said, peanut butter or nut butters could be your best friend if you become vegan. And like you also said, making sure if you want to experiment, do the research and really plan so that it works for you. Like you also mentioned, people struggle to just eat enough when on a vegan diet. And that is kind of the things I'm looking at when I see people that are struggling. It's, yes, they may be eating loads of different types of foods, but it's physically getting enough fuel in, because remember, food is fuel for whatever they're doing, whether it's training or just normal day-to-day life. Yes, you are probably getting a much wider variety of food, but it's getting enough calories in as well, which is hugely important. And like you said, the healthy fats that you can get from vegetables, from fruit, and from nut butters, etc., can really help you sort of boost that caloric intake. But again, it is all down to you as an individual to do the research, like we've kept mentioning, to see what could work for you. Not only what diet could work for you, but also if you do find a diet that you think you want to try, research that diet even more and say, okay, if it is being vegan or even meat eater, what kind of meat you might want to consume, what's the difference between organic and grass-fed and caged meats. And if you're being vegan, like Austin was saying, what is turmeric, what are bay leaves, what are all of these spices that you can use to sort of improve the palatability of a meal that you may need to do if you become vegan. But it'll be good to know anyway if you're not going vegan, because knowing all of this information that you've just learned will help you improve your diet regardless of which diet you choose. So I think that's really important, having a balanced diet, doing the research, not necessarily going either way, figuring out what works for you, but whatever diet you do choose, make sure it is going to work for you. So like Austin's saying, there was a difficulty, or there is difficulty, if you're going out with friends and you find it's, oh well, there's no meals on the menu that are vegan. So okay, well, how do you get around that? You have to plan, maybe even take a little to-go box to the restaurant. I'm not really sure if that would go down well with the restaurant itself, but there's things like that with all diets that you're going to have to consider and really plan ahead for. But that will be it for today's episode, Yam Squad. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. A little bit different, a lot of talking. Let me know in the comments below if you liked it. Ed and I are looking at doing a bit more of sort of a podcasty, chatty type thing. So let me know in the comments below. Like I said earlier, if you're looking at changing your diet, if you saw Gamechangers and thought, I'm going to be a vegan now, let me know why you thought that. If you've done any research, you have any opinions on anything we spoke about today, really appreciate just hearing those. And thank you very much to Austin from Training Tall. I really appreciate, again, the time you've taken to answer the questions today. And as always, Yam Squad, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button, and I'll see you on the next episode.